All right, hello everybody, and welcome to another Green Square Talks Battlebots podcast. So I'm here with Darren. How's it going, Darren?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing well myself. Got quite a bit of stuff set up. Yeah, as you can see, we got a values parts stand set up there. I got a special video coming involving some of this stuff on that stand coming very soon. Uh, yeah, should be out in the early week. I was gonna get it out over the weekend, but haven't had the time to finish editing that thing. But pretty cool stuff. But yeah. Anyway, this is the I believe episode 16 review where we
Yep.
started the bracket leading up to the giant nut. So started off with quadrants 2 and 3, doing those first round matchups, and coming in the next episode will be the 8 matchups in the quadrant 1 and 4 for set parts of the bracket. So yeah, quite a few high quality matchups coming in this episode, and I'd say this episode really delivered. We got several great fights, quite a few close matchups, and yeah, some awesome moments all around. Like I think this was a great episode to kick off the bracket. So anyway, before we get started though and start talking about Witch Doctor and Jackpot, reminder that there are spoilers here. We will be talking about results as we usually do with these episode reviews. So if you haven't seen the fights yet, or haven't seen the fights and don't want to know the results, watch the fights first, then come back here and finish watching the podcast. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started with and start talking about Witch Doctor Jackpot. All right, so first fight to start off, battle between the 3-seeded Witch Doctor and the 30-seeded Jackpot. Right off the bat here, battle between two very nasty vertical spinners, two verts that are pretty well capable of killing the other off. And as I said in the prediction podcast, it was going to be whoever got that first big damaging blow first was going to be the one to win this fight, and that ended up being Witch Doctor getting that. And not to mention, this was actually the one fight I got wrong in this episode, because I actually originally had Jackpot winning this one, and remind me never to doubt Witch Doctor or predict Witch Doctor for a big upset like this ever again. So, uh, Darren, you want to talk about the fight?
Funny you mentioned predictions. In my bracket, I went 8-0 this week, which never happens, so
Heck
that's
yeah.
great. This is a pretty good fight. I mean, you had the boys Witch Doctor, because I'm from Florida, so I gotta support them. Very nice to see them finally getting into the groove. They freaking demolished Jackpot. Credit to Jackpot for staying in the fight, and they kept on trucking for quite a while. But dang, Witch Doctor sent them like really high into the air, like at least 3 times. I think I can't quite remember, but it was a good fight. And at the end of it, I think Jackpot's entire frame was like bent, like part of it was bent under itself, and you could there's like a giant gaping hole in it. And that is a statement win from Witch Doctor. That's basically I don't know what they're saying. They're probably saying something like, "We are tired of being second place. We are going for the nuts" or something. I don't know. Great win from them.
Oh yeah, hands down. Not to mention that like they even said in their interview they weren't intending on going for a deep run this season, but they're sure looking like they're going for a deep run this season because like victories like that, the Gruff win, those are statement victories from Witch Doctor. But yeah, Jackpot did mention, I believe they mentioned this in Discord, that this was actually a frame that they Frankensteined together after the rotator fight or something close to that. Like it's the same frame they used in the rotator fight, but repaired after that fight. And wow, did Witch Doctor do a number on that thing? Because I'm glad we got a close up of that at least, just because that's nasty stuff that Witch Doctor managed to provide on Jackpot. But yeah, Witch Doctor won the early weapon on weapon exchanges because Jackpot lost their weapon pretty early on in that match. Notice there was one belt off, but it looks like there was probably more to it because Jackpot did have another belt on the robot. So I'm guessing there was some internal issue that caused them to lose their weapon. But yeah, regardless though, that was a heck of a dominant performance from Witch Doctor. Well done to Jackpot for hanging in there as long as that, and hopefully we'll get to see Jackpot in the Golden Bolt bracket and see Jackpot potentially make a run in that because Jackpot I think definitely has some potential to do a number on some opponents in there. So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think there's probably too much more to talk about there. Witch Doctor advanced to the next round. We're not gonna do next opponents now because we're actually gonna wait till the end of the podcast and talk about those talk about those four matchups following that. So, you got anything else you want to talk about this one, or should we just move on to the next
Nope.
one?
Let's move on.
Yep, let's do it. All right, fight number two. This one kind of made me sad a little bit because like I think both these robots are kind of in due for a deep run towards the giant nut, but then but then they end up getting paired up with each other. So one of them was gonna get halted right here, and yeah, this fight did go for the most part how I expected it to. It's just it ended in a judge's decision, not a knockout, but yeah, we saw some pretty interesting fort configs for this one. Lucky is testing out a new fort configuration to get underneath and avoid Hypershock's vertical spinner, while Hypershock playing the classic fort game that we've seen them play the most of their fights this season. So, yeah, this fight did go how I expected it to. But Darren, you want to talk about the fight now?
Well, this is pretty kind of went kind of how I expected. Hypershock just drove around. Lucky got to the side, hit him a couple times. Um, I'll admit I'm kind of impressed. Lucky managed to make it to the judges. It was kind of a foregone conclusion at that point, but you know, they did look. I think Hypershock did lose drive on one wheel, but it was kind of hard to notice because Will is very good at driving. But I did notice a chain hanging off Hypershock at some point.
Yeah, they mentioned
That
that in
was
their recap video that they lost drive on one wheel, and
yeah. Um, and honestly, it was a pretty good fight. I will say I did notice that Hypershock's weapon at some points in the match when it hit, it kind of took a bit of time to get back up to speed because I think because Lucky was constantly like in their face. So yeah, good fight, pretty obvious win. Lucky did get like a single flip in, but then Hypershock managed to right themselves almost immediately. So that's good driving from them. Yeah, good fight.
absolutely. Yeah, once again, this fight pretty much went how I expected it to. I was expecting Hypershock to get the damaging blows and win the fight that way. Credit to Lucky. I don't know what they did in response to the Cobalt fight, but whatever they did to build up that robot to take hits from spinners worked because that was awesome to see it survive the full 3 minutes in a fight with Hypershock. And yeah, I got a little bit of confidence that maybe we'd see Lucky pull it off after they got that first flip. But as soon as Hypershock bent that flipper backwards, I kind of knew it was all over for Lucky. But props to them, the flipper was still working even with it crooked like that, and that's always fun to see. And we got another driving clinic from Will Bales here. Like Darren said, Hypershock did lose drive on one wheel. They'll likely do the chain thing that Darren mentioned, but it wasn't very noticeable. Also, Will joins the crew of drivers whose robot loses drive on one side, but they do a great job at making it unnoticeable. So, yeah, but I agree with the decision. I think it was pretty clear Hypershock was going to take it. Sad to see Lucky go out in the first round because, like I said at the beginning of this as well, I think Lucky's due for a deep bracket run because Lucky's significantly improved between this season and last season from what we saw in their first few seasons, and hopefully we'll get to see Lucky with a deep run in champions as well, assuming Lucky's going to be part of that, which I don't see why they wouldn't, but yeah, if Matt Olson and continues to kick butt behind the sticks, Lucky could absolutely make some noise in Champions. So, anything else, or should we move on to to fight number three?
Move on. Oh
Oh
boy.
yes, this one. This one was another one that made me sad a little bit because
Yeah.
it was going so well for Bloodsport. Like
Yep.
I seriously was hyped that Bloodsport was doing as much as they were to Lockjaw, but then losing the way they did, it was just so unfortunate to see at least. And yeah, said it. You want to talk about the fight now, Darren?
Yeah. This is pretty good. I mean, Lockjaw coming in with the wedge. Lockjaw using, I mean, then Bloodsport using the classic long bar, which was a good choice. At first, things weren't going particularly well for Lockjaw. They defended against Bloodsport's hits pretty well, but uh, then they kind of started losing wheels. Then they flipped. Then Bloodsport lost like a motor or an ESC for a motor, and so from then on only had one motor spinning the weapon instead of two. And at that point, Lockjaw turned around to try and go in for some hits, but then Bloodsport ripped off one of Lockjaw's front wheels, and I think also killed the weapon,
Yep.
which wasn't good. But then Lockjaw hung in there, kept kind of getting some hits in, and eventually managed to flip Bloodsport over. And because they only had one motor, they could not self-right because they didn't have the torque. And then the Lockjaw showed a lot of durability and managed to survive the hits and managed to pull out a victory from nowhere, which is really cool.
Absolutely. Uh, yeah, sad to see Bloodsport go out like this because it was going so well for Bloodsport. Yeah, so it started out strong for Lockjaw. It looked like Lockjaw was going to win the driving battle once again, but then the damage started stacking up on Lockjaw as we did see a small fire and Bloodsport. I think Darren explained that pretty well. What was probably going on. I don't think I haven't seen a recap video, but that is that is what I think was probably going on with Bloodsport there. We
Yeah.
see Lockjaw going for weapon on weapon shots. Kind of favored Bloodsport a little more there, just because, like Darren said as well, Lockjaw lost a front wheel, nearly lost the rear wheel on that side, lost the spinner, and basically it was like Lockjaw was starting to get into a corner, to get put into a corner basically in that one, because the fight was definitely not going Lockjaw's way at that point. Then from there, Lockjaw comes in with the rear plow once again to try to hold off Bloodsport's spinner and keep it away from those other wheels. Bloodsport catches it at an angle and gets flipped over, basically. And likely to the reasons Darren mentioned, they couldn't self-right. But I'm actually not sure if it was a motor thing exactly, because
ESC, I think.
or
ESC, I think.
ESC. As for why they couldn't self-right, I kind of wonder if it's the spinner. Actually, the spinner's long diameter might have prevented them from self-righting. But
I remember.
but then what? Because the other reasoning that I was thinking of with this is it sounds like Bloodsport was at some of the recent competitions over the weekend. It sounds like Bloodsport was testing out some new self-righting designs
Yeah.
within some of those lighter robots that they could potentially use for the next version of Bloodsport. Not saying that you're wrong, Darren, because I think you're probably right, like you usually
Yeah.
are. So, but that's just me mentioning another possibility, at least. Even though what you're putting on the table right there is almost certainly right. So, yeah,
Yeah, thanks. I just remember seeing a video where they self-right with the bar.
yeah.
Um, I think it has to do with their motors being differently spec'd than what they were expecting. I don't remember what. I think I remember that being a thing.
I don't
I'll have to
know,
check.
but yeah, it was a fun fight regardless. Sad to see Bloodsport go out after doing so well in this fight right there, because I was personally expecting to see like another driving clinic from Donald Hudson when fighting Bloodsport, but Justin drove that fight so well, at least up until that unlucky moment. And yeah, so anything else on this one, or should we move on to the fun fight?
Let's move on to the fun.
All right, so this
Oh
is one
boy.
we're probably going to be spending the most time on, and I'm sure lots of you will probably lots of you probably have a lot to say about this match. So we got
Yep.
Shatter and Riptide, a rematch from last season, and to put it in point here, the controversy continues relating to Riptide. Uh, or I shouldn't say controversy exactly, I should say drama. Riptide drama continues after this match. Whatever you want to say, we got some of it in this match. So, uh, yeah. So Battlebots had an entire set of clips right before we actually got the fight of Riptide working on their robot after it being weighed, and Shatter coming out and asking what they're doing and requesting a reweigh and so on. So then we got the fight where the fight went pretty much how I expected it to, and Riptide ended up moving on as I expected. So without talking about the drama, tell us about talk about the fight, Darren.
Yeah, I guess I'll start talking about the fight. It was a rematch from last year. I mean, um, Shatter at least lasted longer this time. I mean, that's the best I can really say. It was kind of just like last year, except a little longer. And that's kind of it. It just got hit a bunch and eventually just died.
Yeah. I credit Shatter so much in this one because I do think Shatter lasts. I personally believe right now that I think Shatter's lasted the longest of Riptide's opponents so far. In my
hmm
at least from what I know, I might be wrong about that. It's just yeah, you kind of get the idea. But man, Riptide continuing to prove why this is a they are a major contender to win the Giant Nut this season because like 5 fights here, 5-0, and they most of their opponents haven't had much of an answer for Riptide so far. Because Ethan's driving has just been on point in this one, using Riptide's strengths to their advantage and just not letting up on their opponents. Shower did get a few hammer shots in, but yeah, really impressed with how long Shatter lasted in this one, and especially after seeing all the problems with their drive that they were having, at least in the qualifiers. So yeah, it was nice to see Shatter get a few moments in there, few opportunities, but yeah, sadly the damage just stacked up too much on Shatter, and we saw them lose drive on this one. So yep, Riptide moved on, and sad to see Shatter go out, and hopefully we'll see Shatter in Champions once again. So now let's get to talking about the fun stuff with this one, and basically, let's share our opinions on the drama, since I'm sure lots of people want to hear what we have to say about this one. And I'm going to choose to start with this one. So,
Yeah, go first.
yeah. Yeah, just in case if you have time to need time to think or something, and then you can share your insight or agreements or disagreements and so on. Uh, so yeah, so you're if you are unaware of the drama, basically what was going on is basically after weighing their robots, they were found working with their robots right before entering the fight there, and Eric Wrigley caught them basically and was wondering what the heck they were doing and requested a reweigh out of that. Basically, we see Riptide weighs 2 pounds less than they did prior, and lots of confusion going on between the Shattered team. Riptide goes into the test box, I'm guessing to test their weapon and spin up or something like that, but weapon speed, tip speed, I'm guessing. But yeah, then saw the fight results go on, and we got to see lots of words from the Riptide team. So basically, my stance on lots of this confusion, from what I heard, what Riptide took off their robot was a hammer gimmick that they taped to the top, which they were probably going to take off right before the fight, because I think it was specifically for the arena entrance, basically. So basically, my stance here is that no, I don't think the Riptide team cheated at all. Cause but I do think they could have handled or dealt with this situation a bit better. Cause how I kind of feel about a lot of this is I feel a lot of this would have been avoided if the Riptide team communicated with either production or the Shatter team or something like that, that they were going to take off that gimmick or whatever the 2 pounds was, in case of that hammer gimmick was not the right thing, in case of that bit is false. So uh, it's kind of a bit of a hole in the rule book because a lot of people did screenshot the section of the rule book on that states that you may remove weight off your robot after being weighed in. It's something that I think Battlebots maybe should add to it, that you should clear it with production, because what I have also seen a lot of people do, primarily in Discord, and I think even the Riptide team, even Sid from Riptide mentioned this, referred to Hypershock and Hydra from 2020, where Hypershock in the arena entrance, they took off the wedges right there. Kyle mentioned there that could be basically that can be debunked because Kyle mentioned that they got cleared with production and probably with the Waiachi crew as well, that they were going to take off those wedges right there. So there was lots of communication there. And from what I've heard, there was no communication with Riptide taking off whatever that 2 pounds was on their robot. The other thing that I think went wrong there, that I think Riptide was wrong about, was how they handled that whole situation, basically. Because you could tell when Shatter was wondering what those 2 pounds off were. There were some pretty snotty remarks from the Riptide team. I think how Ethan acted in that place by the test box, as well as the post fight interview, really kind of pushed the limits a bit. Like, I think it probably was a bit unprofessional because I do think Shatter did the right thing when it came to requesting a reweigh there, because you never know. Shatter might have been adding more armor to exceed the 250-pound weight limit, basically, or something like that. Like, I think Shatter absolutely had the right to request a reweigh right there and request, like, make sure that Riptide is functioning the same it was prior to that moment. So yeah, long discussion right there for me on that whole situation, but I think Shatter was absolutely right to request the stuff they did. I think Riptide probably could have handled the situation better and could have done a bit better communication wise, but to clear the record right here, I don't think anyone cheated at all. I think everyone was followed the rules fine. It's just I think there could have been a bit more communication. I hope we'll get to see something more like that in case if some situation like this happens in the future. So, that's my stance on it. Darren, you want to talk about it?
Yes, I shall. Um, right. So as you know, I think what was happening was the Riptide team were taping on a pickaxe, not off,
Yes.
before the entrance. Um, and yeah, the thing is, like, so it weighed 250 before, and then it weighed 248 after, and so of course, the team requesting a reweigh, obviously I think that is completely valid because Riptide, honestly, I don't think really. It just is something you do. Obviously, that just makes sense. Of course, you'd request a reweigh. You don't know what they're doing, and then like um then the reweigh happens, and that's more confusion because the robot's lighter instead of heavier. So um not sure what the heck happened there. I don't think the team has really. They say like that the scales might have been off, but I've seen that being kind of semi not being seen as plausible based on some comments made by some of the other teams about the scales. Regardless, I do think how the Riptide team handled the situation was absolutely abhorrent. It was just awful. It doesn't just. I don't know. Like, it just was so terribly handled by them. Like, the comments by them were not good, and the comment by Stan at the weigh-in didn't really help matters when he said something like, "We found something wrong, so we made it lighter," and he said it in such a weird way that, of course, it's going to raise suspicions now among the community, at least. So they were found that they were doing everything right, and they weren't cheating, so that's great. But I really think that. the reason people are so upset as well is I don't think they. I think people are just. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this properly. I'm not doing a really good job.
That's fair.
So, um, I think people are just. I think I've heard from, and also, so I think people just don't want to give Riptide the benefit of the doubt as well because they don't. Frankly, they don't really deserve it at this point, which they've done a lot of really questionable things, according to many people, and also the interview didn't help matters at all because apparently I don't know if I mentioned this earlier or not, but it was edited apparently to make Ethan look better than he did. Like what we saw in the interview was apparently like the good version of events, like the good version. So apparently he might have said worse things. We don't know entirely. And so I think Adam's reaction was entirely justified. Like I it's not about like the fight or what happened in there. It's the fact he felt like he wasn't getting respect. So, and the handshake is seen as a sign of respect. So, duh. And like, it just it just was handled so poorly, like by all of the Riptide team involved. And what makes it worse is I think Sid has come out and tried to defend the team, but he hasn't. He's only really explained about the prop thing. I don't think he's really talked about the weight thing, which is a whole other kettle of worms.
Yeah.
I just, it's just, it's ugh, and it's just really a lot of ugh because I really think the Riptide team. I think there needs to be more rules about how sportsmanship works, like at least just something to hopefully prevent things like this from happening. Like they should have cleared it with production. I think that would have solved most of the problems here. Would have been if they had cleared the prop gag with production. If they had done that, they would have told the Shadow team, and none of this would have happened. We would have been all fine. But they didn't, and seems like they feel like they're above the rules, which it kind of makes them seem like they think they're above the rules, which you don't want. And it's just, ugh. It's an embarrassment, I think, to be honest.
Yeah.
But and also, like we've heard from Adam in that interview that he hasn't experienced bad things from the Riptide team up until that point, but he's heard bad things about them from like the other teams in the pits. So that kind of tells you how disliked they are. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess. Riptide, I really either hope they get a new team or or just don't come back because I don't really know. I don't really think that that team should be allowed back because they are not really helping the sport out at all. They are really damaging the image, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah,
That's all I have
at
to say
least from a
about it.
competitive standpoint, you're absolutely right on that. A competition standpoint, but like
Yeah,
television purposes, I'm sure they're absolutely absorbing something like this just because drama reasons, and it's why Shatter vs. Riptide was Fight of the Week. So, but yeah, I didn't talk about the handshake thing. Like, I agree with Darren. I think it was justified that Adam didn't shake hands with the Riptide team after that because Riptide calling out Shatter before and after the fight that Shatter requested the reweigh just because they were scared of the Riptide. That doesn't seem like an Adam Wrigley type thing, at least. It's like Adam's fought like some of the biggest spinners in the competition, and like we saw him like fire his hammer right into Deep Six's weapon many times. No shot they were requesting that reweigh just because they were scared of Riptide. But yeah, I think that remark was a bit uncalled for, and Shatter had the right idea about requesting all that stuff. And but yeah, uh, yeah, I'm kind of on board with the Riptide new team thing, but like, I love the robot and everything. Like, I think it drives very
yeah.
well. It's a very well performing robot.
It kind of makes it worse,
Yeah,
I think,
I think
because
it's
it's
just,
such a
but then yeah, it's just the personality of some of the team members just bothers me a bit, at least. And
yeah. I
yeah,
think it's a lot of things with
but
the team.
nothing against like most of the team, because like when I've talked to Lars and DMs, he said that many of the team members on the Riptide are some of the nicest people out there, and uh, But yeah, might as well address this as well because it was mentioned by Eric like right after Shatter got conned out that Eric was thinking they were going over the tip speed. There have been rumors going around at least that Riptide has been going over the max tip speed. That has been confirmed to me by multiple builders that Riptide did not go over the max allotted tip speed. Uh, from what it sounds like, they're like right on the border between like the max and right below it. So yeah, I think we probably talked about that enough. Is there anything else you think we need to talk about with this match?
We can move on.
Yeah. Lots of drama, but was a powerful win by Riptide, and Riptide moves on to the next round where they're taking on Hypershock, which should be a fun fight. But we'll talk about that match later. Let's talk about the next match. Okay, this one. So we got a battle between two big names, another rematch from last season. After Mad
Yep.
Catter decimated Claw Viper pretty well in Champions, and we got a new and improved Claw Viper and Mad Catter, especially Claw Viper, who's could just come out of nowhere this season with a powerful 3-1 record, and Mad Catter coming into this one as the underdog seating wise, but still a pretty powerful 2-2 record from Mad Catter's end, and we got an awesome brawl between these two, in my opinion, and ended up going the full 3 minutes, and the decision went pretty much the way I expected it to, and the fight result went how I expected it would. But you want to share your thoughts on it, Darren?
This is a pretty good fight. Kind of back and forth. Like at first, Cloud Viper was darting around the arena like mad, as it always does. Got good few pins on Mad Catter. Mad Catter got a few good hits on them. Um, and I think for a good about half the fight, I think Cloud Viper was arguably on top. It was on top. And then like Mad Catter got their lifting arm, like the top half of it, and then they managed to get one monster hit that flipped them over and got him stuck in the corner. And then Mad Catter's weapon kind of died, but Claw Viper couldn't really do anything, and so Mad Catter just kind of awkwardly shoved them a little bit, and then for like the next minute, because they could not self right without that arm, and so then the judges came and Mad Catter was declared the winner. Then Club Viper decided to appeal because it was split, because why not? And then the appeal held that Mad Catter won. So, yeah. Good, nice, very close fight. Um, yeah. Good, good.
What was so funny about the appeal was the fact that in the second Claw Viper interview, Kevin revealed that he forgot he was flipped over for the last minute of that match and struggling to move there. That was kind of funny, but yeah, I felt that appeal would have been was I wouldn't say I would say it would have been more valid if Claw Viper wasn't on their head for the last bit of that match. I think that's what won Mad Cow the fight. Like I think if that last minute did not happen in that match, I probably would have awarded the fight to Claw Viper, because
Hmm.
but yeah, the fight went a lot how I expected it to. Looked like Claw Viper was struggling at least on the drive, at least on the control side in the first bit of the match because Kevin drove into a wall once or twice, but eventually got a good handle on it and was giving Calvin Iba a big run for his money on the driving game at least. Got some excellent control moments, but yeah, lost the top part of the lifter early on after driving it into putting it into Mad Catter's weapon, and yeah, Mad Catter got some big hits, then one that flipped over Claw Viper before Mad Catter's weapon died, and from there it was Claw Viper trying to self-right, not being able to, probably because of the damage done to the lifter, and Mad Catter got a few control moments before the clock hit zero, and setting it to a judge's decision. Like Darren said, Claw Viper appealed the decision after getting a very close split decision call. I think it was 6-5 across the board, as I would have put it personally. And yeah, great fight from both robots. Uh, Another situation was like sad to see Claw Viper go out on this one, just because I think Claw Viper stunned so many of us this season. Like like crazy how far Claw Viper has come from the previous two seasons compared to this one. Claw Viper went from 1-2 the previous two seasons in qualifiers and not making bracket to 3-1, taking out some big names in the process, and then coming into the bracket. And sad to see it go out in the first round at least, because I think Claw Viper definitely has some major potential to make some serious noise. Hopefully, we'll get to see something like that in Champions. So. Yeah. So Mad Catter advanced based on this judge's decision victory and have a tough opponent in the next round that we're gonna talk about in a little bit. But yeah, I think we addressed everything I was hoping to talk about here regarding the fight and the judge's decision. Anything else you want to talk about this one, or should we move on?
Nope, we can move on.
All right, let's move on. All right, next one, Huge and Scorpios. So bit interesting configuration wise for this one because Huge added some extra armor to build up the robot, build up the front frame of the robot to fend off some blows from Scorpios, knowing Scorpios was probably going to try to go for the base of Huge and try to disable it that way. Scorpios with some armor with a special armor config on the front and that they felt would be best for taking on a robot like Huge. So yeah, it was going to be an interesting one. It was going to come down to driving between Zach and Jonathan, and this was another fight once again where it went pretty much the way I expected it to. Just it was a lot quicker of a fight than I was personally expecting. So, want to talk about the match, Darren?
Alright, yeah, this is a honestly, I think pretty much kind of a foregone conclusion. I mean, Scorpios did get like 2 hits in that sniped those poles on the side of Huge, which is pretty good at driving and aiming, but Huge just managed to get away and hit Scorpios in the wheel and then kind of dig through their top armor and then kill them. Pretty quick KO. I'd like us all to quickly to celebrate the fact that this is Huge's first ever tournament win, which is great.
First tournament win for quite a few of these robots. 'Cause yeah,
Yep.
this was Mad Catter in the last one. Hypershock, first one since 2016, and so on.
Yeah, that's kind of all I have to say. It was a pretty quick fight.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I think Shatter or Scorpios did get some nice hits early on, knocking off those poles, like what you said. But then Huge just started stacking up the damage. I think they managed to puncture a tire or both of them at least part way into this, and then looks like they did. It sounds like the number Huge did on the left side of the robot killed the drive on Scorpios, but yeah, a bit quicker of a fight than what I was expecting to see. Just knowing what both these robots are so well known for is they're known for pretty powerful weapons and some pretty insane durability. So, and this fight, I don't think it even lasted a minute if I took a guess. But another impressive win from Huge. Like, I think this is, I think this might act. This is Never mind, no, not true. I was first gonna say I think this was Huge's first knockout of the season, but no, Shatter was a knockout, and I'm trying to think of who their third opponent was, because I know Blip and Star Child were both judges' decisions, but regardless though, Fusion, but that was also a knockout. But yeah, we haven't seen Huge get that many KOs, and it was nice to see a pretty good one from here. So yeah. Well, anything else you wanted to say about that one? Because that's all I had for this fight.
uh, nope, we can move on.
Yeah, let's just move on to the next one then. Quick fight,
Yep.
good win from Huge. Okay, this one. So, Copperhead and Rotator here. Two pretty big names clashing it out here, and this was one of the fights I was most looking forward to on this side of the bracket. Because, yeah, this one was one the ending result of this one was what I was expecting to see from it, but I don't think it was as high quality of a match as what I was hyped up for, but it was a good fight regardless. Like I don't think it was a bad fight in to say the less, to set the record straight, but uh quite a lot happened here. Want to share your thoughts on the match, Darren?
Um, this is a pretty back and forth-ish fight. I mean, Rotator managed to stop the drum at one point, but then they got away and got some hits in, and managed to make Copperhead lose drive on one side. But then Copperhead just came back around and managed to pick off those forks and also disable the weapon of Rotator apparently, and also get that wheel guard bent up and kind of in the way of the weapon. It nearly broke it off, but I'm kind of amazed it managed to hold on for the entire fight, which is pretty cool. Um, Kind of petered out a bit towards the end, as both robots seemed to kind of be slowing down in general. But yeah, pretty convincing. Well, not really like it's kind of a pretty soft win for Copperhead. A judge decision win. Not really that destructive of a. It was kind of destructive of a match, but wasn't really that. It's kind of felt a bit. It kind of slowed down towards the end, really, and yeah. So good, decent win for Cophead. They progress, and if we're going by the Rotator champion curse, that means Copperhead is definitely gonna be the champ this year.
Yeah, we'll see.
And that's all I have to
I'd
say.
love to see a Copperhead championship, but yeah, we'll find out. So my thoughts on this match, at least, pretty like definitely wasn't the most high quality match that we probably could have seen from either of these robots, but it was a good fight regardless. We got some big hits at least on both sides. Pretty impressed with how well rotators of those forks were taking the impacts, because this was another fight where I was expecting that their opponent was just gonna pluck those forks off, because that was my opinion. That was my take when Rotator was gonna fight Fusion, and that was another take when I thought they were gonna fight Copperhead here, but yeah, yeah. Like there was definitely a lot of damage done to both these robots because Copperhead did lose drive on one side, Rotator lost their spinner, lost a bit of a wheel guard, almost lost a wheel at least, and but both of them held up all right to the other's punishment. But Luke just proved once again how well he can drive that robot even with one-sided drive, because that's what we saw when they fought Lockjaw last season, and that was another case here. So yeah, I'd probably say with like definitely regarding the judge's decision, because I might as well talk about that as well, because I have heard one or two comments of people disagreeing with the decision and wondering why Victor didn't appeal this decision. Which, to be fair, I don't think we actually know whether Rotator was gonna appeal the decision or not, because I don't think it was ever revealed whether that was the case or not. But yeah, at least from the viewing standpoint, I thought it was pretty clear that Rotator won, or that Copperhead won this fight. But definitely it was close, at least on my standpoint, when I put together a judge's scorecard for this match. Like I had it as 6-5 for Copperhead because I thought Rotator won damage at least because drive is very important to me, and I think Copperhead losing that one side drive is huge. But I thought Rotator didn't win on the control and the aggression sides, even though Rotator did have some solid moments in both of those. So yeah, I thought Copperhead just dictated the pace for most of the match, and I thought Copperhead won that decision. Anything you want to add, Darren?
Nothing much I can think to add to this one.
Yeah, that's fair. So Copperhead moves on to the next round, and like Darren said, the past every season that Rotator's been in the bracket, whoever beat Rotator proceeded to win the giant nut. So if that thing continues, are we gonna see Copperhead hoist the giant nut? I would definitely love to see that because I think Copperhead's another Copperhead is one of a huge list of robots that I think absolutely have the potential to take home the giant nut, and like one of those robots where they're just waiting for it to be this year. Like they've come up just short so many times. This is like Witch Doctor, Whiplash, Sawblaze, Copperhead, Rotator, Cobalt, Minotaur, Black Dragon, Jackpot, and Malice, obviously. But yeah, you get the idea. There are so many that are like this could be their year basically, and next season could be their year as well. And you get the idea. So yeah, Copperhead moves on to the next round where they take on the winner of the fight we're going to be talking about next. So should we get to talking about that match? All right, so
Oh
we got
boy.
another rematch between these two. Endgame and Rotator round three. Battle between the two champs from the previous this two seasons. So this one was another one. The result was how I expected it to, but it was a lot closer of a match than what I was expecting we were going to see here. And it was a good showing from both robots. So, but sadly, one of them had to go out in this one, and yeah, it ended up being the defending champ by a judge's decision. So, Darren, want to talk about the match?
Yeah. This was basically, I gotta admit, Tantrum versus Endgame is like the new Hypershock versus Bite
It
Force.
honestly kind of is.
Yeah.
It's either that or
Um,
Hypershock and Scorpios.
they've only fought twice, I think.
Three.
Those two. They have?
Three. They fought in 2018, where Scorpios won it by a split judge's decision. Then there was
Mm.
Bounties from 2020, where Scorpios won that by a pretty decisive judge's decision. Then there's Champions last season, where Hypershock won that by a very decisive
Oh yeah,
KO.
they.
So,
Oh,
yep,
you're
that's.
right.
But the rematches are still crazy. At least the number of times we've
Yeah,
gotten it. Your
I
point
love. I,
still
I
stands. So, and
yeah,
that's the
I
and
love
that's probably the
rematches.
better. That's probably the one I'd prefer to get a rematch over than like Hypershock and Scorpios. So
Right. So, uh, this fight kind of went a lot about the kind of like all the others have, which is Endgame wedged under Tantrum for 3 minutes. Except this time it made it to the judges. Actually, wait, no, I just counterintuited myself. Sorry. Yeah, Endgame basically dominated this most of the match. I mean, Tantrum at some points. um, but it was overall Endgame's victory. They got some nice hits on. They got rid of both of the forks, and it was a pretty convincing win for Endgame. And Tantrum will not be the champion this year. And yeah, honestly, it wasn't really that. It was kind of exciting, but it was kind of tame, to be honest.
yeah,
That's kind of all I have to say.
yeah, it was nice to see the champ put up a pretty decent fight in this one after the struggles they were having in their previous few matchups. This fight kind of went for the most part how I expected it to, because I was expecting we were going to see lots of fork game going on, but I knew one of them was going to take immense amount of damage to their forks, lose their ground game, and then the other was just going to take advantage of that and dominate it for the rest of the match. And that is why I picked Endgame for this one, because I feel Endgame had the most potential to get that shot in, and that's pretty much what we got right there. Nice to see, yeah, because Tantrum was definitely winning that fight for the first minute or so when we were seeing some head-on stuff and we were seeing some sparks fly, which I believe was Tantrum's spinner grinding against the wedgelets of Endgame. But then Jack managed to invoke a driving tactic or something to get underneath Tantrum and start plucking forks and then eventually destroying that front because I don't think we've seen the front of Tantrum take as much damage as what we saw right there. But it was nice to see Tantrum working for the full 3 minutes of that match and take it to a judge's decision. And yeah, I think Endgame pretty clearly won the decision there, but and definitely moved on to the next round. But it was a pretty solid fight all around. So uh, yeah, so Endgame moves on to the next round where they're going to take on Copperhead. So I don't think there's terribly much more to talk about here. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to it.
All I can think of is I think I heard from somewhere that that Tantrum might be retiring after
Yeah,
this
that's
season.
the yeah, I have heard that because
Yeah.
I think that was on a screenshot I saw from a Reddit post, But also, Aaron Hill hinted like on this podcast actually when he made it on when he came onto the podcast for the last episode of the main competition last season that they have a third robot they are looking to put together and bring to Battlebots. I I think it's a cluster bot from what I've heard.
Yeah, like the
Heard
twerps.
yes, yeah. I think from what I've heard, it's a cluster bot design, and
Yeah.
from what I've heard, if they plan to only bring two robots, and I think unless if Tantrum was to win a giant nut once again, it was going to be Tantrum. They were going to plan on retiring because yeah, Tantrum's yeah, but Tantrum's a great robot. Like I'm not saying like that they're picking Tantrum just because it's a bad robot. It's just they've gotten the results they were hoping for at least because two very deep runs. I think they were looking to do something similar to that with Blip, or at least reduce cut down on the number of spinners. I think is more likely part of the reason. But yeah, like it'll be sad to see Tantrum go if that is the case, if they are going to be retiring Tantrum and not bring it back for next season because we've seen so much awesome stuff from Tantrum, including how far it's come ever since it debuted in 2018 because 2018 not the best performing, but one of the greatest moments ever in that Tombstone fight came out of Tantrum. And
Mhm.
yeah, and then 2019 debuted the punching design. Sadly, didn't do so hot. 2020 came out of nowhere, made a Final Four run. Last season, championship, and then this season, definitely got dethroned, but solid shot. But I highly doubt this is gonna be the last time we're gonna see Tantrum because it sounds like Golden Bolt is coming once again, and Tantrum will definitely be in that thing as one of the champions. So yeah, sad to see. Sad that this could be the last season of Tantrum, but at least we'll get to see it once or at least one to two more times. Well, a few more times. So yeah, anything else left to really talk about here, Darren?
Nothing I can really think of at the
Okay.
moment.
I didn't really have an image for this part, but I thought we'd mention that the fact that they were doing an after show for this one. They spent, I think, like 20 to
Yeah.
30 minutes as an after show bit, and I thought maybe we'd share our opinions on that, what our thoughts were on that. So I know, Darren, you were the first one to bring that up before we start recording, so I'm guessing you have some big thoughts on it. What's your stance on
I
it
love
exactly?
I love I love it. I love it. I love how casual it is. I love the I just love the little casualness of it. It's like a nice cool down period after all the fights. You get to kind of relax and hear from the teams and how everything's going. I liked hearing from Adam about the damage that was done to Shatter, and I also liked hearing like the game plans that Solvers and Blip were coming up with, and the little funny shenanigans they have with like the earphones in the arena. That was funny.
Yeah, is that all?
Uh, yeah, that's kind of it. I loved it.
Yeah, I was a personal fan of it as well because it's always nice. It's always awesome to get to see like a deeper insight on some of the action or some of the upcoming action we're gonna see here. Because yeah, we got to see Adam talk about the Riptide fight and give us like a lot more insight on what was going on there. Both with the robot, the aftermath of the fight, with the damage they took from the robot, and what was kind of going on with some of the drama that we were talking about earlier. So but yeah, I like how they're getting the builders more involved with this because like combination of having a builder come to commentate a fight with them, I think has been I love that bit too because like Chris and Kenny have definitely gotten more knowledgeable on the sport, but they're definitely not as knowledgeable as like several of the builders in this competition, and so getting that even deeper insight in the commentary, I think is awesome to have. And I think Balbot should absolutely consider doing that once again for next season and all that stuff. And But yeah, getting to hear the insight from Aaron Hill and Jameson Go on their upcoming match that we're going to see next episode between Blip and Sawblaze, that was fun to see as well. Getting a good insight on what those two robots plan to do to try to take out the other. And yeah, like that's probably one of the matches I'm most looking forward to in next week's episode. And yeah, I think it
Mm.
should be great, and I think they did. I think the podcast was pretty well built, or the after show, or whatever you want to call it. I think it was awesome. I hope I bet we'll be seeing it every season or every episode up until the final following that. So, but great stuff and was well put together. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the last thing I was hoping to talk about with this episode.
Oh
Yep, so
boy.
done this with the bracket for each season that I've been running this podcast. So upcoming matchups. So these four matchups were confirmed. This is in place of the whole next opponents thing. So these are the four
Hold
matchups.
on a second.
Yeah, these are the four matchups that were confirmed in the recent in this episode. We're going to see Riptide take on Hypershock. We're going to see Riptide take on Hypershock, Endgame and Copperhead, Witch Doctor and Lockjaw, Huge and Mad Catter. These four matchups won't be next episode because next episode will be specifically quadrants 1 and 4 of the bracket. We'll see those four matchups along with the other four matchups that are going to be confirmed after the next episode that following week. So, uh, quite a few high quality matchups here. Like several of these, I think could go either way. Who do you got on these matchups, Darren?
Okay, Riptide versus Hypershock. I mean, Hypershock's been pretty good. Riptide's weapon is quite scary, but Hypershock is, I think, has like a lower weapon. Like, you know how like when you have like a drum versus like remember with Witch Doctor versus Minotaur,
Yep.
and how Minotaur kept hitting Witch Doctor up. I think a similar thing is going to happen here with Hypershock and Riptide. Like Hypershock is going to be able to like get because Riptide, when they're spinning, by the time they're spinning like down and forward, Hypershock's hitting like up. So I think they're actually going to win like any face-to-face battles. And so I think Hypershock might actually be able to pull it off. Endgame and Copperhead. Ooh, these are tough. I have to remember who I picked. I think I picked Copperhead, and I based that entirely off of their performance against Minotaur last year, who's a similar kind of style of robot, and they lost that fight. So I think that's going to happen here. Um, Witch Doctor and Lockjaw, I have Witch Doctor winning that one because they're just more reliable, I think, and will probably get around to the sides and win. Huge versus Mad Catter. Huge is designed to face four-wheel drive verts, and they're finally facing one. They haven't really faced many, so they're finally going to be able to show off what they're supposed to be able to do. Uh, so yeah, I think Huge is going to take that one. That's my takes.
That's fair. So I'm gonna go from the bottom to the top because I think the bottom two are the easiest ones for me to predict, and the top two are the hardest for me to predict. So Huge and Mad Catter. Mad Catter is one of those verts that Huge is like designed to take on pretty well. I think Mad Catter is going to struggle in that one, and I think Huge is going to win that by design advantage. I think Mad Catter's only shots of winning that match are either going to be go weapon on weapon and hope to get like Huge stuck in the screws or something, or some stuck in some position that Huge can't right itself or something, or go for the wheels and try to take those apart, which hasn't worked out very well for vertical spinners in the past. But I got Huge winning that one, and that's the one between the four that I'm most confident with. Witch Doctor and Lockjaw. Yeah, I think consistency between for Lockjaw is the main reason why I'm predicting Witch Doctor for this one. I think this fight's going to start out in Lockjaw's favor. I think Lockjaw wins some of the first few hits, but then I think it's going to be like a Lockjaw Bloodsport type situation, at least for the first 3 quarters of the match right there, where I think the damage is going to eventually start stacking up in Lockjaw's against Lockjaw, and I think Witch Doctor is going to win the fight that way. Endgame and Copperhead, that's a tough one. That's probably the toughest of the four, in my opinion. Darren is absolutely right that I think Copperhead is probably going to start that. I think Copperhead is one of the worst enemies for Endgame here because I think Copperhead is well designed to pluck the forks on Endgame, bend them upwards, and prevent Endgame from winning the ground game. But the reason why I have Endgame winning this one is I am very concerned about how well Copperhead can take spinner attacks from big spinners like Endgame right there because we've seen Copperhead got KO'd pretty quickly against Riptide or not Riptide, Ripperoni, even if it was a couple driving errors. And then we saw them lose drive here against Rotator on one side. And then there were other fights where they've lost drive, at least on one side or more. Because like Bloodsport, for example, they lost drive on one side after that huge hit, but Copperhead being able to take hits from spinners is a big concern for me and why I have Endgame winning this fight. Riptide and Hypershock, I sadly I got Riptide winning that one. I want Hypershock to win that one because I want a deep Hypershock run. I really want to see it basically. Uh, but I think basically how I see this one going, if we see weapon on weapon action, I think Riptide's gonna win those exchanges at least. I think while Hypershock I think does have the better ground game setup at least to possibly knock Riptide off balance at least, like what Mad Catter was able to do early in that fight with Riptide. I think Riptide will pluck those forks off pretty easily, and then they're just gonna go all hell breaks loose on Hypershock once again. But how I could see Hypershock winning this one, I think Hypershock absolutely has a speed and maneuverability advantage in this one. So I think if Hypershock can dictate the pace of the match, maybe do donuts around Riptide like what they've done with several opponents in the past, and avoid that egg beater altogether, or take advantage of the gyroscopic forces of Riptide, Hypershock could win this one. But I wouldn't count on that happening based on Riptide's driving style, and that is why I have Riptide winning that fight. So, yeah, so yeah, overall, like somewhat similar predictions. I think we were kind of half and half on which one on ones we agreed or disagreed with, but just means that just shows like how those fights really could go either way. So
Yeah.
meaning that lots of high quality matches are coming. So uh, yep, no hard feelings between Darren and I, because like when lots of you comment predict like when lots of you comment predictions and on my prediction podcast, I always love hearing what other fans have to say about lots of this stuff, regardless if you agree or disagree with my takes. So it's always nice hearing my point of view as well as hearing Darren's point of view as well as anyone viewing this podcast. So feel free to comment down your predictions if you would like for these upcoming matchups. So yeah, anything else really to talk about here, Darren, with these matchups or just this podcast in general?
I can't think of anything else to talk about.
That's fair. So yeah, that'll do it for this podcast. So thanks for watching this video. Like and subscribe as usual. Check out Darren's channel for some fun content. And yeah, there will not be a prediction podcast this week just because basically the next episode is going to feature quadrants 1 and 4, and my predictions will not have changed from when I did my bracket predictions podcast. So if you want to know who I have winning those 8 matchups, just check out my bracket podcast from last week. So that'll be enough to that's where I shared all my predictions for that. But the prediction podcast will be back the following week when we have 8 matchups. One of them not being what, at least one of them not being what I expected we'd see. But yeah, you kind of get the idea. So thanks for watching this podcast once again, and I'll see you next time. Bye.